opposition speaker for his speech. And now to open the case for opposition, I call upon Michael Macklin.
South Africa acknowledges the shaky situation in Japan, but we don't think that that means every country throughout the world should abandon nuclear energy. That's the team line we've taken. We're going to be clashing, first of all, on the safety issues that the UAE have brought up, and then finally we're going to be talking about the inherent efficacy of nuclear energy and why there aren't any real alternatives. But this is what we need to look at in today's debate, is the paradigm or context that the world currently exists in. And we exist in a world that needs all the power we can get. We need as much electricity. But we do acknowledge that we need cheap, we need clean, and we need safe electricity. But nuclear energy is all of those things, ladies and gentlemen, and that's why we wouldn't abandon it. In terms of my positive matter, I'm going to be talking about how nuclear energy is an effective provision of energy, and then also going to be talking about the impacts of abandoning nuclear energy, what that would have on development in both the first and third worlds, or developed and development. My second speaker, Britain, is going to be talking about how if we abandon it, we remove research and development, which is crucial in nuclear energy. And then the second point we're going to be talking about is how we need to break our dependency on the organisation of petroleum exporting countries. But first, let's deal with some rebuttal. And we were told we were going to get 3 issues of positive matter in the UAE's first speech. We only got 2, so I'm going to be dealing with the costs because he didn't do them in my positive matter. But what he did tell us was first of all safety and unsustainability. And on safety, we had 4 subpoints. We had mining, the process, small glitches, and then we had this 4th issue of waste of nuclear energy. The first thing on mining and processes, we showed you in a POI that lax regulations in India don't mean that you're always going to get cancer if you're involved or if there's an existence of uranium mine. No, thank you, sir. And the fact that in South Africa we have uranium mines with some of the world's best regulation and we don't have the mass incidences of cancer, we think that's proof to that. The fact that that's repeated in Canada, in North Russia, and in many other countries around the world is proof to the fact that we need regulation, not to run away from the boogeyman that UAE are trying to create. And that applies to the process the same, and working in nuclear power stations. First of all, we don't think that many people actually work in these power stations. They have incredibly sophisticated processes that run the majority of the day-to-day running, but the fact is they're still safe. Then in terms of what they try to go through as a small glitch at Chernobyl, nothing really went wrong, the system was just flawed. We would say that the incredible negligence that led to the Chernobyl explosion in the reactor isn't a small glitch. That's a massive failure in regulations that prevented that problem. And then on the second issue, the massive impact of Chernobyl, yes, we concede that Chernobyl itself was to some instance, very badly affected. We concede that. But we don't think that the rhetoric about how it threatened the entirety of Europe has been met by any realistic results in reality that within which we live. We don't think everyone in Europe suddenly got cancer and grew an extra arm. We don't think the harms are as great as UAE are trying to create. No, thank you. And this leads me on to the final notion of the potential existential harms of terrorism. First of all, there's a very big difference between weapons-grade uranium that you put into a fission reactor in a bomb and what we put into a pebble-based reactor, which is how nuclear reactors are designed, ladies and gentlemen. It's not one big chunk of uranium that could destroy the entire world. It's many small fission rods, all of which are essentially used to turn water into steam and turn turbines. They're not that dangerous. We don't need to fear terrorists. And if we did have to fear terrorists, and exploding them was potentially dangerous, Chernobyl proved that you're not going to destroy the entirety of Europe, even if you could blast that reactor. No thank you. Now we need to look at the second issue of unsustainability. And on the first issue of unsustainability, he was talking about poisoning the food chain, I need timing teammates, poisoning the food chain, and impacts on biodiversity. And that doesn't happen if there's no leak. That's the first issue. And that's why we don't see all these problems in Canada, in South Africa, in America, in France, in all the other countries that use nuclear reactors. No thanks. Then the second issue of how we're eventually going to run out of uranium to dig up. If we run out of uranium to dig up in 100 years' time, ladies and gentlemen, it's not as big a concern as coal and oil and the like, because uranium is so super efficient, we don't need to keep digging it up to perpetuate our nuclear energy.
And a point, sir.
And then finally, ladies and gentlemen, on this notion of we have to build them far away, that's why we can prove that they're bad. No, we build them far away because we think that having an unsightly reactor in the middle of the city isn't something most city designers want. And then on the notion of Japan being forced to build it on a fault line, it's a tiny island. Nowhere in Japan is particularly far away from anywhere else. They didn't know that fault line existed. It wasn't their fault. Okay. Now we need to look at the effective provision. And essentially we feel nuclear energy meets three very important criteria. It provides lots of energy, it's cheap, and it's safe. In terms of the efficacy of energy, that hasn't really been contested. It's simply a fact that a lot of energy can be produced by nuclear reactors in a moment. Now we need to look at the fact that it's clean. And the actual issue with clean technology in the modern world is CO2 emissions. Nuclear energy doesn't have any CO2 emissions. That's why it doesn't contribute to global warming. That's why it doesn't contribute to climate change. The actual harm we need to be avoiding when we're talking about energy provision. And then finally, on the notion of safety, I've dealt with how mechanistically and on a process level, nuclear energy is safe. And I've also proven to you that 3 freak accidents, Chernobyl, 3 Mile Island, and Fukushima, first of all, weren't the fault. They were the fault of poor regulations, not a nuclear system. And the notion of 3 Mile Island, no one died, so we don't really see the harm there. Matt?
So why would you invest billions in a resource that you've already conceded will only last the next 100 years? Just simply put us in a situation
we can't dig up eventually in 100 years' time. Maybe we'll run out of uranium to dig up, but the potential for that uranium to produce energy extends thousands of years into the future, until 2152, whatever the date they gave us. That's the potential that uranium has to continue producing energy. So that's pretty cool here on. So nuclear energy fulfills all the regulations, fulfills the 3 criteria, so we shouldn't abandon it. Now let's look at what would happen if we do abandon it on 2 distinct levels. First of all, in the developed world, like Germany, and secondly, in the developing world, which is where our concerns really lie. Now, first in the developed world, no thank you, we would say that the first world of the developed world is in the midst of an economic recession. So we don't really want to lose any more jobs. We don't want to have less power with which we can build Mercedes-Benz and sell to the rest of the world. Because those are 2 crucial things we need in order to gain the impetus to move out of the recession. No thank you. And in terms of their model, by phasing it out slowly, we still think you're going to lose jobs, ladies and gentlemen. But more importantly, particularly in a manufacturing-based economy, as many developed worlds are, the fact is you need power in order to put things together, and you need power in order to have something to say. No thank you. So all Angela Merkel's actually done is held Germany back from moving out of the recession. And the reallocation of money into developing green tech isn't enough. We've still lost energy, and it's going to take us years and years and years before we get to the capacity we already had. They've taken a step back. This is more true in the developing world, ladies and gentlemen. Because we believe the developing world is where we really need as much cheap energy as possible so that we can reach the levels of manufacturing-based developed economy that both sides seem to be arguing for in today's debate. And we see that there are a number of options, but only one of those options is feasible to countries like South Africa, other African countries, South America, wherever. You can either continue to rely on coal and gas, whatever that is, but it's incredibly dirty and it's going to run out. So it's not really an option. The second option that UAE would have us go for is developing green technology. And we just don't feel that the developing world has the technological capacity or the capital to redistribute massive amounts of money into researching and developing an unyet proven technology. What they can do is buy French nuclear reactors like Algeria has done, buy Russian nuclear reactors like Iran has done. We can provide energy now, we can do it safely. We shouldn't abandon nuclear energy, ladies and gentlemen. And just because Japan's in a shaky situation doesn't mean we're all in a